Since here, we can
All right, let's do this.
Get this show on the road.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have one item this afternoon. Previously, we had two items, but decided to postpone the other bill so that we can gather some more information from the executive. So we will come back to that particular bill. But today we are going to discuss Bill 35-19, Personnel Collective Bargaining, Certified Representative Duty of Fair Representation. And this is a bill that was introduced by Councilmember Hucker on November 9th of 2019. There was a public hearing in December of last year, and the bill would amend the duty of fair representation for certified representative of county employees, authorize a certified representative to impose the reasonable cost of filing a grievance or pursuing arbitration on an employee who does not pay membership dues or the equivalent, and permit a certified representative to refuse to file a grievance or pursue arbitration for an employee who does not pay membership dues or the equivalent unless the employee pays the reasonable costs imposed. We did, as I said, we did hold a public hearing on December 3rd, and we had two witnesses who spoke on behalf of labor union, county employee, that supported the bill. We had UFCW Local 1994 McGeo as well as IFF Local 1664, and they argued that it was unfair to require the union to represent an employee in the bargaining unit in a grievance or arbitration hearing who chooses not to pay either union dues or the equivalent. So that is basically the context of the bill. I will turn it now to Mr. Drummer, who has put together the packet for us and has raised a couple of issues for us to discuss, and then we can open it up for conversation and questions and things like that.
Good afternoon. This bill, just a brief background, the collective bargaining process is based on a system where an organization is designated as the exclusive representative of each member in the bargaining unit. Whether they want them to be the representative or not, they're based on majority rules generally. And each of our three unions, representing actually four bargaining units, have an exclusive, or the exclusive representative. The general labor law is you have a duty of fair representation, that you need to represent everybody in the unit without regard to whether they join your union or not. Back in the 1970s, the concept of requiring union membership in the public sector was challenged by saying that, you can't, it's government action, you can't make somebody join an organization they don't want to. It violates their First Amendment rights. The Supreme Court in 1977 said, yeah, you're half right. You can't make somebody join, but it's eminently fair to make them pay for what the service that they're getting, less whatever the union spends on political endeavors, which they don't have a right to force upon you. And 41 years later, although the First Amendment hasn't changed, the people that interpret it have. And they changed their minds, the Supreme Court changed their mind and said, no, that's unconstitutional. It violates the First Amendment rights of those people who don't want to join the union. You can't force them to pay union dues. That leaves us with a situation now. Each of the bargaining units have negotiated with the executive and ultimately approved by the council provisions that require what we call an agency shop fee. So you don't have to join the union, but you do have to pay the equivalent of the union dues less the percentage of money that the union spends on political events and political advocacy. After that, the Supreme Court decision has now struck down that provision. Can't be enforced. So nobody has to either join the union or pay the union dues. So what this bill would do is kind of a response to that decision is, okay, the union still has to represent everybody in the unit with regard to bargaining, right, because they bargain for everybody. So everybody is covered by the collective bargaining agreement. They represent everybody. But when it comes to individual grievances that are requested by an individual employee, most likely we're talking about discipline, the union would not have to necessarily file on their behalf and represent them through grievance and arbitration unless the employee agrees to pay their reasonable expenses to do so. If there's a dispute over whether the expenses are reasonable, that would be submitted and resolved by the, depending on the bargaining unit, it's either called a labor relations administrator, or for the police union, it's called an umpire. Same type of person. It's not the same person, but the same neutral. It's a neutral arbitrator that would make the decision on the reasonableness of the costs. So that's what the bill does. It's patterned after what the General Assembly did for the amendments that they made to the collective bargaining law for the park and planning employees, and I think also the Housing Opportunities Commission. They didn't do it across the board. They just did it for those two state agencies. They didn't do it for their own employees, and they didn't do it for school employees, but they did it for those two. And that's what this bill is patterned after that. It does the same thing. The issues really is, first is the concept of union dues and dues deductions and agency shops, and whether the union has to file grievances is something that's subject to bargaining. And the parties could bargain this on their own and then come up with a solution and present it to the council as proposed legislation. The council could react to that. In this case, the council is acting on its own unilaterally to just change the collective bargaining law and make the decision on this is how we're going to do it. And this bill would cover all three unions, all four bargaining units represented by three different unions. So one option is to simply hold the bill and wait and see if something comes out of bargaining. They're in negotiations now. We're not going to see results probably until the spring. And the other option, I guess, is to go ahead and enact it. On the merits, it makes sense. It's reasonable. It resolves what they call the freeloader problem. Is like, I don't pay, but I get the same service, which nobody generally thinks is a great idea unless you're the person getting the free service. So this would resolve it in a way that's reasonable. And it's a policy decision. The council clearly has the legal authority to go ahead and do this without bargaining, without waiting for bargaining. It's just a policy decision whether you want to wait for bargaining or not. We did receive testimony from both the firefighters union and the McGeo, the General Employees Union, in favor of the bill without any request for changes. The police union we haven't heard from, and we haven't heard from the executive either. And that's where we are.
That's interesting. Okay, any Council President Katz?
Thank you very much. It's been so long, I forgot which way I was supposed to turn the mic on here. I'm in favor of this bill. I think it's an absolute sense of fairness that if someone's not a member of the union, they're not paying the dues, that the people who are paying the dues should not have to pay for that person if there is a grievance. And I think it's just a sense of fairness. So I'm very much in favor of this bill.
Okay. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, I agree. Same concept. To me, it's basic fairness. Other people shouldn't have to pay if you're not paying into the pot. So it's a benefit that's being provided by an organization, and if you don't pay for the benefit, you shouldn't get the benefit for us. I think it's a pretty basic concept. I don't think we need to wait. I think it's a basic aspect of fairness as a matter of policy, and I feel comfortable with us moving forward personally.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate, Mr. Drummer bringing up the issue of collective bargaining, but I do believe that this is sort of like almost like a structural type of policy decision for us. And to me, I think it makes sense to just move forward and address it. So what I'm hearing is that I think it's a three in favor.
Okay.
3-0 for Geo. There we go.
And since there are no amendments, then I think we're good.
Okay.
All right? Okay, so with that, I believe we're adjourned. Thank you so much.
Let this be said.
That's right, a new trend.